Welcome back to Texas Liberty Podcast. I'm Clark Patterson, and tonight, along with Ted Brown, I'll be interviewing Paul Darr and Jacob Bradley, who are both candidates for Region 7 for the Libertarian National Committee. Tonight is Monday, April 29th, 2024. And so, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'd like to start out, if I could, by asking both of y'all how you guys got involved in the Liberty Movement. Was there any specific incident or world event that happened, or a national event that happened that caused y'all to see the importance of liberty? So why don't we start with you, Paul? If you can give us some background, how long you've been in the liberty movement and what caused you to take the plunge.
Okay, I started kind of early on for myself here. I grew up in foster care, just so a little bit of background there. And I'm really odd even for one of the individual coming out of foster care. When I was getting ready to turn 18, I was looking ahead going, well, I don't want to do some of the different things there. What are some things that are, I can do when I turn 18? And well, I can register to vote. And I'm just that type of geek. So I said, well, I just don't want to look at the Republicans and Democrats. I looked all around. And in the late 90s, I had limited access to different things, but I did have access to this newfangled thing called the internet at the time, and jumped on there and run across some writings from Dr. Ruart there, with that was going on at the time for their newsletter there for the advocates for self-government movement there. One of the early on internet outreaches of the Libertarian Party, and really resonated with me there. The message of freedom really resonated, and registered as a Libertarian in the state that I was in at that time. And then really my call to action to get into the party was after later on I joined the military, like many poor people do, to get out of poverty there. And while experiencing in the Iraq War, I got to see, even when we thought we were trying to do something good there, of all the bad things that really happened in war. And I remember coming out of that and wanting to speak about, how we shouldn't be going to war and different things like that, and decided to get more active in the party. And I also saw some of the splits that were going on at the party at the time. Was like, hey, let's keep all the principles in, and got really active later on. I remember Ted's county at the time was one of the first counties I got to speak at about an anti-war movement.
Well, great. So it sounds like you've been a liberty advocate for about a quarter century, 25 years or so, Paul?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, great. Great story. Okay, Jacob, but how about you? How did you get involved in, how did you get involved in seeing the importance of liberty in day-to-day action?
I grew up in a very Republican home. I was very much on that side for a long time. I would self-describe myself for the good chunk of my life as a neocon. I had very strong libertarian leanings, but I did think that we should be the world police. I bought into the propaganda that if we don't fight them there, that they're going to come over here and fight us. And I ran into a lot of that. It wasn't till 2020, a buddy of mine asked me why I was a Republican. And I told them, they're not great, but it's the lesser of two evils. And he looked at me and said, well, voting for the lesser of two evils is still voting for evil. And he shared with me some libertarian tests, which I was leaning towards libertarianism from that point anyways. But he gave me some podcasts, a couple of books to read. Anatomy of the State, I think, was the one that really, shoved everything down my throat, really got me activated in the libertarian movement.
That's Rothbard, just to clarify, right? That's Rothbard?
Yes, that is Rothbard.
Well, great. So just to finish up, so you've been a libertarian or libertarian movement activist for about how many years then, Jacob?
Just about 4 at this point.
Well, great to have you aboard. So for more specific questions, of course, about the LNC, of course, my colleague Ted Brown will ask you those sorts of questions, gentlemen.
Yeah, so welcome both Paul and Jacob. Thanks for joining us here. And this is the first Libertarian National Committee show that we've done. And hopefully we're going to have some candidates for some of the officer positions as well. I think one's scheduled and hopefully some more will be as well. Now, isn't it the case that the Region 7, which you wanted to be a regional rep from, is not totally set yet? Won't the states be set at the convention? And then the delegates from each of those states will caucus for electing this position?
That is
Either one of
correct.
you. Yeah.
It is correct. It seems like every year at the convention, there is a shuffling of the deck, and different states pick different other states to go into regions with. So as of right now, the only real state we know that's going to be in Region 7, or at least in our region, is Texas.
Okay. So now I was going to get into some questions about the LNC. So obviously there's a lot of controversy now for the last, well, there's always controversy with the LNC, but for the last 2 years, the Mises caucus has pretty much been in control of the LNC, and a lot of people have complained about the fewer members, less fundraising, suing other party affiliates, et cetera. Why don't I ask each of you, what's your opinion of how the LNC has been functioning, and what do you see are the problems, and what would you do to change things? Let's start with Paul, and then go with, since he's on the committee as an alternate right now, and then go with Jacob. Paul?
Unmute myself, of course. I can obviously say things haven't gone quite as planned. There was a roadmap planned out. There's a plan to go by. Things haven't gone according to plan. There's a few things that I think made it so that plan couldn't be brought to fruition as much as those officers. I think they had their heart in the right direction, but some things were going to work against them naturally. By taking over the party in a large sweep there, they lost a lot of the institutional knowledge of the last 50 years of the Libertarian Party that have been distilled of, we've done a lot of things wrong and figured out how to do things, from that, what not to do. And now a lot of times they end up having to repeat that right now. There's only a couple voices on there, and they only have experience in their various areas. So that hurts them, just not knowing what not to do in some areas. So I think it's important to also, there's individuals not represented on the national committee right now, by only having one faction be primarily in control. Others feel disenfranchised. So some of the things I think it's important is to bring back a few individuals that have some of that institutional knowledge. Some people might say, hey, you're going back to doing it one way. No, I just want to know that we aren't going to repeat the mistakes of the past. And having that knowledge there is knowledge, and experience is experience. We should see some of that reintroduced, I hope, by the voters there. That's all up to the delegates, though. The other things that we can control, also by the delegates, would be bringing on some different voices, not one faction or another, just a variety of people. And another thing would be to be able to reach out to all those that are feeling disenfranchised across the party. We need to come together and be able to work together professionally. We just don't need one side controlling everything, and we need to have those that are working together to work together professionally. We don't need to be fighting each other all the time. We all have the same enemies outside of the party. We need to come together and work towards that common goal. So that's where the direction I see the party, and kind of getting back on some of those objectives. We're going to be losing ballot access in a few states, finding out what their plan of attack to get that in the next coming years, so that when we come up in the next 4 years for presidential, we'll have ballot access across the board again. So those are some of my thoughts.
Okay, Jacob?
I definitely think there were some growing pains. I don't think that anybody can dispute that there were growing pains going on. I will say that I have been on the affiliate support committee for the last 2 years, so it's given me the opportunity to not just talk to people who are on the LNC and officers of the LNC, but also I've had the opportunity to grow the relationships with the state chairs. I've talked to about 40 of them at this point. It's really given me insight on what exactly the party needs and what exactly it's kind of slipping on right now, or having some faults, or just not getting there. I think the biggest thing that just needs to be done within the Libertarian Party itself is we need to put together, or put to the side, the differences that we have. I like to say, between my other Libertarians and myself, the only thing that separates us is about 3%. And Libertarians have the tendency to fight each other on the 3%. We agree that roads should be privatized, but we'll argue for 6 months if they should be white or black roads. Like, it's ridiculous. So I think a lot of what really needs to be done is mending some of those roads or mending some of those fences, getting people back engaged into the party. But as a whole, the Libertarian Party just needs to stop arguing about the 3%. Like, let's work on the 97% and get that done. And then, me and you can argue over the last 3% that remains on what we do with that 3%. But I think until we can have a moment of everybody just coming together and agreeing that, hey, fight for this stuff that actually matters, that's going to affect our kids and our grandkids. I don't think this party can be successful until we come together and actually fight together hand in hand for the liberties for the next generations.
Okay, so now Paul mentioned the issue of ballot access. That's a really important issue. In fact, for a political party, I mean, if you're not on the ballot, you're nowhere. And I know that New York has done whatever they can to keep us off the ballot. But how is ballot access coming along? What other states are a problem? How is that being addressed? What are the chances, and what are the maximum number of states we're looking at? Let's start with Paul again, and then Jacob.
You know what? There's still a wide range of states that are in place, so I don't want to give an exact number now. And some of that information I've gotten in various committees where I can't share the details of that right now. So there's a wide range that we're working on right now. There are a few states that are going to pose some difficulties that will likely to not be overcome this upcoming time. So we know there's going to be a few states falling off. But I'd rather not get into specific numbers so I don't accidentally state anything outside my NDA there.
Okay, and then Jacob, your views on ballot access?
I think there's very few things that national should be doing. Ballot access is probably the most important of those. The problem I kind of fall into is the problem that Paul falls into, because a lot of those discussions are happening within certain committees under, I guess, NDAs. It's not something that most people are going to be privy to. I've seen a couple of states, I believe it was Alabama, who got statewide ballot access this year for the first time in a while. But without, being on one of those committees right now or on the LNC, it's really hard to tell. I know Maine had a really good showing, but outside of the few that I've talked to, it's really hard to say where the LNC sits on ballot access this year.
Okay, well, it's hopefully we'll hear more about that, because we're getting pretty close to the election. But of course, we don't have our presidential candidate yet, and of course, we're not seeing we aren't being polled like say Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, as long as we don't have a candidate. So we're not seeing or being mentioned that way. But back to the LNC. That's a good point about the executive sessions, and I've been reading about that in a lot of the Facebook groups about how so much business is done secretly, and then the members of the committee can't say anything about it. I mean, that seems like that has not been done that way in the past. I mean, obviously once in a while if you have a personnel matter or something, but it seems like it's overly used. How would each of you think about trying to limit the number of executive sessions in the name of transparency for the membership? I'll start with Jacob on that one.
So as a member of Select here in Texas, being on the XCOM here, there are times that we go into executive session. There's times that our executive session is warranted. I believe that executive session should be used as little as possible, but then you're going to get into things like staff roles or money wise when it comes to staff and things like that you just don't want to be a shine. I mean, it shouldn't be public knowledge. So I think there's a balancing act of what should be publicly released when it comes to that kind of stuff. But as a whole, if you want to build trust within any organization, transparency is going to be the best way to do that. So I think the best step would be what isn't absolutely necessary in an executive session should be given the transparency that it deserves for the general members to be able to watch the meetings and see what's going on so they can keep themselves more informed.
Okay, Paul, what have you observed on this?
I would say getting onto the LNC, I was surprised at how many different committees are operating under default. Everything is a closed session with the committees. I would like to move that we're more like the how the policy manual for the LNC for the executive committee to move to session has to be under certain items, like Jacob was talking about there, like LP Texas does. I'd like to follow that model also with some of those committees, because those committees get a lot of the work done and you get an idea there, so that they might have some more open sessions going on as far as those committees. It's not going to be helpful to have all sessions open, but some sessions have being open there would really help with communication and transparency of what's going on. Getting a little bit of feedback is helpful in some areas. Is definitely helpful for being able to change and react to the needs of the membership here. I very much like things to be a little bit more transparent, but once again, recognizing that there are those confidential items that need to be kept confidential.
Well, what about, I understand that some LNC members have been not allowed in the private meetings. Is that correct? And why was that?
All right, so I wasn't going to bring that up unless asked. Unfortunately, that was the case. Let's go back to what both Jacob and I talked about, how we want people to work together. Right now, there's certain people that aren't working together with other individuals and making sure they're excluded. Fortunately, I'm hoping that in the future we'll be coming to where we won't be having that exclusions going on anymore in the future. I'm hoping that we can bring people together and not have those exclusions. There was some pretense to the earliest exclusion saying violation of NDA, but then later on the reason given was they just didn't like the individual. So at least they came out and said it that way, so we can know that that's how that individual is going there. In the future, let's be professional. Let's not just exclude people because we don't like them. Let's work together and be professional. That's all I can say about those sessions there. And I'm very sad that those individuals were excluded. The chairs of our region called for the resignation of one of the members of the LNC. Even they don't have any power to do that. That was just them saying how displeased they were with that particular action.
Right, I'm familiar with which member they wish to resign there.
Yes.
So, and then Jacob, obviously for equal time, what's your view on this about members of the LNC being excluded? Not even just rank and file members, but members of the LNC being excluded from these executive sessions.
I believe it comes down to what was the reasoning. If the reasoning was that, hey, we don't like this people, we don't want to deal with these people are, like I said earlier, 3% different than us, that is not something that should be happening. If it went to Paul's earlier point that maybe there were some violations of NDAs where things were being shared, I could understand from that point. But if it just came down to personality clashes, I don't think that was the right solution for that particular item.
Okay, so now another issue that I've been reading about is about lawsuits that the national party's in litigation with the LP of Michigan. And now Paul and I were both involved in the California LP years ago. And if I recall correctly, the California bylaws, there were only three causes where someone's membership could be expelled. Someone could be expelled from membership in the party. And one of them was involving embroiling the party in a lawsuit in government courts was one of them. And so here we have the LNC suing the LP of Michigan, I think because there's a disagreement about who's actually in charge of the LP of Michigan. And I just wondered, should the LNC be involved in the affiliates like that? And should we be suing fellow libertarians? I mean, having two libertarian parties in Michigan, if there are such a thing, is better than having no libertarian parties in Michigan, in my opinion. But let's start with Paul again, because he's been on the committee where this has been going on.
So I've been saying for a while, and glad I've heard other people saying the same thing here, that lawsuits for any reason should be the last item in a long line of attempts to resolve an issue. Why get the state involved in our internal party matters? There's multiple lines of mediation we should be trying to do prior to that. There's a lot of different personalities that are going on in that specific case, and some really hard feelings across different groups there. I do not support suing a state affiliate under those circumstances, and I was supportive of one of the Beth and I were the few votes to withdraw money allocated towards those lawsuits. And so I feel more strongly than some others on that. I feel that there's a lot of mediation, even, you know, if the others on the committee that are more directly involved don't want to do it, you know, I'm way over here, but sure, I'll go talk to people on their behalf and try to mend some fences there. You know, if that was the case, you know, I'll say sorry for them. I don't care. I want the party to come back together. Let's not sue each other and drive us apart.
Okay, and Jacob, what's your view on that?
So this is a tough one for me because leading up into the state convention, I got super involved with the affiliate training committee in Texas to reach out to state chair or to county chairs and getting them whipped into getting their paperwork in and all this stuff. So I kind of fell behind on the whole case. I was asked about it last week and really went to dig into it and asked anybody and everybody. And I got multiple conflicting stories from all over the place, exactly what was happening. So I can't necessarily, I'm not informed enough on this particular situation to comment on it directly. I wouldn't say there's not a time to sue in a situation like this, not per se, but just in general. We had lawsuits in Texas with state parties organization trying to take over the party a few years ago. There was some really good work done by people here in Texas during that lawsuit. So I'd hate to say no, there's never a reason to do it because there obviously are times when it is necessary. There's also times when it's not necessary. And honestly, I just don't have enough of the picture in this to take one stance or the other on.
Okay. And then let's talk about the party's fiscal health, because obviously there's a lot of concern about that, about less members causing there to be less fundraising. And now, one thing actually, I was told personally by our national chair that the data was lost for like monthly pledgers at one time. In fact, I was a monthly pledger for a long time, and my card dropped off, I believe, and no one's ever solicited me to re-up or anything like that. Obviously, I can do that whenever I want, but the point is, a lot of people don't even notice, and they're not being solicited, and we're just not trying to apparently not trying to get the old pledgers and the contributors back. I wondered if either of you know anything about that, or what, how we can get people back on board. Let's start with Jacob on that one.
So I will say that there was a big issue when National switched over to Civi. And the reason I know that there was a big issue when National switched over to Civi is because when Texas switched over to Civi, there was a big issue. We saw roughly in Texas at the rollout of Civi the same drop off as National saw within a few percentage points. Texas had a downturn in donations at about the same rate and about the same time into Civi. I think it is hard to try to capture those people back once somebody's lost, just because once you contact them, you might be able to get them on the phone. You can't force them to redonate. Yeah, I'll donate, I'll go back, and they don't necessarily go back and do it, or just having the manpower. I mean, while National has more staff that can make those phone calls and do those things than Texas does, National also has a lot more people involved in it. And if you lost that data in a switchover in the CRMs, how do you necessarily contact those people back to let them know that their donations have run out? I mean, the switch over to Civi, I wasn't great. It was not something that helped, I think, any party in any of the states, and especially at National. I just think it was a situation that was kind of set up to fail from the beginning. And we can see it across the states with anybody who did switch over to the Civi CRM compared to like what we had in Texas was a nation builder beforehand. So it's really hard to pin down exactly what that problem is. I mean, yes, there can be more effort put to raising funds to growing party. I think a big thing with that is fiscal responsibility. You can't expect people to give money if you're not being fiscally responsible with the money they have. transparency, like I've talked about in the past. There's just a lot of things that can go into, you know, encouraging people to come back into the party that have been lost. But it's hard to say without looking at what was lost with Civi from the old CRM, what exactly steps you can take to get to there.
Okay. And then Paul, what's your view on that? How do you see getting some of these folks back if we can?
Well, a little bit of change of stopping the fighting is also a good thing. That'll a lot of people don't want to donate while the LPs internally fighting each other. And once again, with the lawsuits, when I've done some polls in the past, a lot of people said they weren't donating just due to not wanting to contribute to that in the current time. But I don't know how, if that's really representative of overall, because the polls, of course, is only going to be into my circles or the circles of the groups doing those types of polls. So yes, there was a drop off with the switch over to Civi. We should try to recover the data the best that is possible. I know, you know, I still have a lot of questions. I'm a system admin, IT manager background type of guy, and there's a lot of things that just didn't seem right with some of the answers I got, but I don't know if the people are, it's just because they're not technical individuals. And so when you go through that filter from a technical person to a non-technical person, they might not know the proper language to kind of communicate what was going on there with the issues that are going on. I do know that any Serum we switch to in the future, my high recommendation is to make sure to do user acceptance testing. That's where you test out and make sure the people on the end are actually able to use that tool and it meets the needs of the individuals using that tool. That we shouldn't have a full-on switch over when that tool doesn't meet the end user's need. That's just from my experience in working in that field. Not enough of that was done to make sure. Training can overcome some of those types of challenges, but we need to make sure the tool fits the need there. What we can do in the future, if good old mailers, I haven't seen a lot. I've only seen a couple mailers recently come out, and I'm not quite sure all on the direction of the scope of those mailers. But as we capture that data, yes, mailers cost money, but we have so many recurring donors that dropped off that will make back that money with that initial donation coming back, because we're able to target it to people that have given us money in the past. It's not just a blanket mailing. Good old mailers, phone calls, messages, getting active into reaching out to those individuals are how we're going to need to capture them back. And it's just going to take work and making sure we give our staff the right tools to do that work.
Okay, thank you. And Clark, how are we doing on time? Are we about ready for the closing remarks and such?
Well, yes, in fact, gentlemen, we have about 6 minutes and 45 seconds. So let's act as if it's 6 minutes. So in fact, did Jacob, I guess Jacob did have a chance at that last question, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so is it time to maybe roll into closing remarks?
Right, like just to give us your final remarks about why you should be elected and anything else you want to tell the listeners about yourselves.
Who wants to go first?
I'll take it. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Jacob.
So I have been in the party for 4 years. I have been a county chair. I was just reelected to my third term. I was just reelected to my second term on the XCOM here on Select. I am on the affiliate support committee. So I have the experience in that level. I also have a very big passion in affiliate growth. I don't think we can be a strong party without a strong foundation in the county and state level. So I have put out training books on both the state level. I've sent them out to about close to 60 chairs in the state of Texas. I also put out a national book that was very, very in-depth. It was about 80 pages of original content. I put that out through the affiliate support committee last year. If anybody wants that, feel free to reach out to me. I can get it to you. But I think, and then with my time on LP Texas as the training coordinator, I've really put a lot into myself, a lot of myself into this party. I have worked my fingers and bone, or my bones to the core, and have really, you know, gone all in on this. I think I've shown that I have enough time. I have the leadership. I'm willing to do the hard work and get down in the mud and the muck to scrap. when it needs to be. You know, you need somebody who's really strong, who's going to fight for the best interests of Texas and the rest of Region 7 from this LNC position. And I really feel that I'm the person who showed that while I'm willing to do the work, I'm also willing to scrap when it needs to get there.
And real quick, Jacob, tell the listeners where they can find you on social media, or like where's the best social media account to reach you and find
You
out
can
more
look me
about
up
you.
on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way. I don't get on Twitter a whole lot. I do a little thing for a couple of companies, organizations, stuff like that, but I don't actually do much for my own Twitter anymore. So Facebook is probably the best way to reach out to me. Or if you go to LP Texas, you can find contact for me. I am the chair of Waller County, so you could email me through LP Texas's website under the affiliates link.
Great. Paul?
Okay. So yes, I also I've been in the party for 25 years now. I've been a county chair for one of the largest counties in the United States. And the past when I lived in California, and I was in on the California's executive committee. Now moving after having lived in Texas for 10 years, I've gotten to see how Texas has done it. So I've seen how two of the largest states and the Libertarian Party operate, and what's the good and bad between different ways of operation. And I've worked with different groups and through different controversies, even in the past, with different individuals, and built bridges between individuals that were deeply divided. Not as divided as we are now, because this is probably the deepest divide I've seen in years, but people have been divided in the past, and I've helped build those bridges in the past. The trouble I see right now is we have multiple states with it's not just Michigan, but there's other state alternative libertarian parties out there. I want to work to bring those people back in. I don't think we're good fighting each other in separate parties out there. I'd like to bring us all back together on the same team, fighting against the duopoly there, so that we're not fighting across those states either. I think I'm the right guy to help build those bridges there within our region. We have a lot of different people of different groups, and I'm going to try to work with everyone across all, the spectrum of thought that's out there. So that's highly important to me. Hopefully I only have to serve one term on the LNC, because that's pretty much my big goal there, is to try to bring us on the path of reuniting together, and hopefully I can pass off to somebody else at a later time there. And if you want to find me online, let me see. As far as social, it's really tough. I'm on about 20 or so different Facebook groups for pages for different affiliates out there. So I never see my notifications, to be honest, for different social things. So if you want to reach out to me, there's my LNC email, paul.darr@lp.org. I respond to that immediately, anyone that gets me there. I also have a page at paul4lnc.darr.org that I just threw up for fun, hard coded that myself there, where I have some contact information and stuff up there that you can find me. And there I do have a Twitter and Facebook if you want to friend me over there at Paul Darr on Facebook, and Paul J Darr, I believe, is my Twitter over there, but you can find me over there.
Okay,
Well,
thank
great.
you.
Well, I tell you what, we have about 30 seconds, Ted. Why don't you're running a really big race, Ted. So let's let you give you 30 seconds to go ahead and tell us where folks can find you, Ted.
Oh, for the U.S. Senate race, just go to tedbrown.org. To the website. You can follow me on Twitter at Ted Brown Liberty, and on Facebook at Ted Brown for U.S. Senate Libertarian for U.S. Senator from Texas.
Well, great. Well, gentlemen, I've enjoyed this tonight. I've learned a lot, actually. And let me just remind the listeners and viewers that tyranny exists when the people fear the government. Liberty exists when the government fears the people. So go out and show the government you're not scared. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.